Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Wow, what a place.
This was church we were just in. As I've been listening to this record, I keep thinking how your early music is very much in the region of punk, which is a kind of aesthetic of angst. And way back when the German existentialists talked about angst, they popularized it in the modern sense. And to them, it meant that uneasy feeling that we get when we face the abyss between our rational will and our personality, the conscious and the unconscious, which in a way is a natural place for a young person to be when we're living with all these parts, the turmoil of the conflicting parts, trying to be whole. But then you live long enough and you get to see that any feeling of angst is really the soul's cry for mercy, for salvation, for wholeness. So in a way, any honest life starts out as punk and ends up as prayer. and here you are. But here you are, making something so incredibly prayerful. Where does it belong in the arc of your honest life?
That is the most difficult question I've ever heard. Not because it's hard to answer, but you've already answered it so beautifully and articulately. Yes, I think personally the young are essentially incomplete people. That the young don't like to hear this, but that they don't understand life actually at that age. Unless they've gone through...
Do we ever, though?
Well, hang on. Unless they've gone through something that shatters them in some way. And I believe that we become actual human beings once we are faced with the full trauma of our life and a kind of obliteration of that self, and we become something else. That is, in my experience, been the way. And I see this... mostly with everybody, a capacity to be able to see the world in an entirely different way that springs out of a sort of breakdown of the self in some kind of way. So all those wonderful things about being young, and it's much more fun in a way to be young because you are only half formed and you just don't know what's coming down the line. That's why looking at young people, and young people are so beautiful, because they're not just simply not fully formed human beings, in my view. So there goes all the young people buying my new record.
Well, what's wonderful about this record is that it seems to say that on the other side of that suffering, that brokenness, is joy. Yes. There's this wonderful line you have, we've all had too much suffering, now it's time for joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I guess I have this thing called the Red Hand Files, and basically I think that's really what the Red Hand Files are about. I mean, it's about several things that I'm trying to say. But one of them is to sort of reveal the terrible beauty behind grief, and that is that there is a better life beyond it. And this is anathema to people who are freshly grieving. This idea is some sort of blasphemy or some sort of assault upon those that they love and have passed away. But I'm here to say, if I'm an advocate of anything, it is that there is the capacity to feel enormous joy in life that you had no idea about before the catastrophe happened. And it comes not only through death, but the big moments in your life. The having of children, for example, is another massive event. But these events are essentially the things that expand the heart and allow us to feel these sorts of things.
And that transmutation of suffering to joy is maybe what we call transcendence, in a way.
Yeah.
Which is woven through so much of both your writing and your music.
Yeah, I mean, joy for me is a complex, it's not a simple word. Joy is an extremely complex word, and it's not happiness. Joy is, for me, a transcendent in the sense that it's reaching. It comes from joy is essentially another form of suffering, you could say, in the sense that it understands our basic human nature, which is our brokenness, and that it is reaching above that. There's this lovely song called Frogs, and to me, I mean, this is to... I love frogs, in a sense. I love the little guys, right? Yes. Because that's what they do. They sit on their lily pads, and then they just suddenly go, whoa, like that. And this is just this is what we do. I think our little hands are open, and then we land back down in the lily pad. And I think there's other little frogs sitting on lily pads, looking at these people doing that and thinking, what's the fucking point? You just land back. You just land back where you were. But there's something in the leap that changes you and that collects meaning as you do it. So for me, the record, to go back to the record, is really in and of itself a sort of articulation of that leap and back, and back down again. Did that make sense?
Yes. Absolutely, and of course. So Nick mentioned the Red Hand Files. Now, how many people here are subscribed to the Red Hand Files? Yes. This is actually the reason we're here. I have to confess how we ended up here. Some years ago, my friend Amanda, who's a musician, Amanda Palmer, said, there's this thing called the Red Hand Files. You're really going to love it. It's very in the spirit of what you do. Nick Cave writes it. To which I said, who's Nick Cave? What? No, exactly. Not an uncommon occurrence in my life as a refugee from the 19th century who lives under a rock the size of Europa. Nonetheless, I went home that night, signed up, and got my first Red Hand File, and it happened to be this absolutely beautiful meditation on music, feeling, and transcendence in the age of algorithms. Now, bear in mind, this was many years before ChatGPT, when nobody on the creative side especially, not the tech bros, but the artists, was thinking about these questions, which are really questions about what it means to be human.
Yeah.
And all these years later, I've thought about this many times since. And it's interesting now. I mean, we talked a little bit before about, what is it called, that service that you put in a prompt and it gives you a...
Suno.
Right.
Suno is a song generating app.
Well, the thing is, though, it sounds like it can create something aesthetically very compelling and beautiful. But I'm still very much moved by what you wrote about all those, this was like maybe, 6 years ago, more than that. That listening to this record, it is so clear that this frog thing, that transcendence, whatever you call it, joy, that can only come... The frog thing, right. That's the ultimate end game of life, is the frog thing. But that can only come from a place of feeling. I mean, this is a record suffused with just feeling of a human being who has felt it all. The pain, the sorrow, the joy, the triumph. And an algorithm can simulate the kind of packaging of that. But in the absence of feeling, can it really give us this church feeling that we shared right here?
Yeah, well, look... This is not really the direction that I want this to go, in a way, because my view, but because it exposes something about my deepest concerns about what we are as human beings, is in that as our current culture carries on in the way that it does, I think ultimately you're wrong in the sense that people ultimately just won't care. And it's a very bleak way of looking at the world, and I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist about the human beings. I think human beings are of enormous value, and I love human beings, and I love the world. But I'm worried that we are becoming so demoralised by the constant messaging that we are of no value, that the world is a terrible place, and all we can do as human beings is to damage it and hurt it and do terrible things to each other. That this AI, this idea that it will take away, that it could possibly take away the very soul of the world, which is the creative struggle itself, bypass that to just the product, may be, to a demoralised world, enough that we just have the product and we can type in and say, right, make a song about my grandma who just died, and out comes this song, and it's enough. And the idea of the creative struggle will ultimately be seen as a sort of impediment on the way to the product itself. And that genuinely worries me, because I see it happening all the time. I see all the true transcendent experiences that we have being chipped away at. And it worries me. I think this kind of AI, this idea that we can just create songs without the need for artists and all the sort of messy stuff that artists are, and go straight to the product, is symptomatic, I think, of a general way that the world and our culture is unfolding. That's why I didn't want to get into it, because it's so
But
bleak.
I think it's important that we talk about it, because in a way, what you make is the counterpoint. I mean, I experience it as the counterpoint. I live on a 200-year time scale, and I often think about what is it, the stuff that's being made today that in 200 years will move people, will move human beings to have an experience, a feeling of thought, of emotion that is deep. There isn't that much that's made today, but that's not singular to our time. Think back 200 years, the time when Beethoven wrote Ode to Joy. I mean, I experienced this record as our contemporary Ode to Joy. How much of the stuff made in his time endures?
Well, look, what you're doing, and you've said some very nice things about the Red Hand Files. I don't know if people know about the Marginalian. Hands up who knows about the Marginalian? Okay, well, there are a lot more people who are watching, but it's my audience. But you've got to look at this thing, because I mean, we would disagree. It's your thing, but we were sort of disagreeing about it. It is in a way, it's a sort of in my view, I see it as a sort of conservative venture, in the sense that its purpose is to conserve the wisdom of the world in some way, and bring that stuff together and show how it interplays in the most extraordinary way. So just briefly, I mean, do you want to explain what is it?
No, we're here to talk about you.
Okay, it is talking about me in a way, but so the Marginalian is this. I don't know how long you've been doing this for.
It's almost 20 years.
20 years. So it's finding beautiful works, right? Poetry, pieces of writing, essentially, right, and ideas, and weaving them together in the most elaborate and beautiful way. It is an extraordinary service to the world, and an act of unparalleled generosity. You're the Florence Nightingale of the blogosphere.
But here's why this is relevant.
But the thing is, what you're doing is showing evidence of our value as human beings. That's what I see. Whenever I'm dispirited about the way the world is, I go to your thing and see what our potential is as human beings, and how complex we are as human beings. And when I go onto Suno, and put in a prompt, I'll just, this is this song making app. I put in you just write a prompt, and out comes the song 15 seconds later, right? And it's good. It's not, seriously, it's not, it's like awesome. And someone told me about it. I put in a dark, gloomy song about a banana, right? And this song came out 15 seconds later. That was good. It was called The Dying Peel. It was good. I'm just like, fuck that. That's good. It was ironic, and the lyrics were good, and the lyrics were talking about the dark stains upon the banana, and it was, it was really good. And this is the first iteration. So on the one hand, it was like, wow. And on the other hand, the next thing I felt was deep nausea about that this thing, we have the capacity to be able to do this. In 2 years' time, you're going to be able to pump out a Nick Cave song with all the stuff that you're talking about that mimics all the stuff.
I don't believe that, though, because I don't think that this feeling that we had here can be created by bits of data that haven't had the Nick Cave life.
Yeah, well,
that's just not going to be the same.
This is I do make this argument, and I made that argument
all those
6
years ago.
Years
exactly.
ago. The way AI is going now, I find that argument is feeling more and more like made by a kind of elite sort of artistic type that still sort of thinks that they are of immense value in the world. And actually the world is moving so fast that this kind of character or this idea is becoming sort of like kitsch or something like that. That's just what worries me. That's why I didn't really want to get into this situation, because what I really want to talk about is just how valuable we actually are, and how valuable the world is, and how valuable the things that we can do as human beings actually are. And so I see that, to get off that subject, I see that stuff as a deep threat to the sort of precarious nature of ourselves as human beings. Anyway, I don't want to be the harbinger.
I mean, I'm an eternal optimist, and hearing this, I keep thinking, without the suffering, AI will never suffer. AI will never suffer.
Absolutely.
And without suffering, we agree on the brokenness aspect that's necessary for creating anything, the restlessness.
I absolutely agree. I just think suffering's going to be like retro.
Commodified?
Retro.
No. Vintage human.
Remember when they used to suffer?
But, okay.
Go figure.
There's a lovely line in one of the songs that says, amazed of pain and amazed of love. So amazement is something that's a uniquely human capacity, the capacity to be amazed. Without it, there would be no art. There would be no art.
That's right.
I mean, I would say everything you do that I have experienced is a form of amazement at the world. And this record is this crowning curio of amazement.
Yeah, I am, that's true, and I am amazed of the world, and I am amazed of love, and I am amazed of God, and many things, actually, and it's, I am. I don't know even what to say about that. Once again, it sort of goes back to that these things, that things can happen to you. I think I have a sort of reaction to the world that's just fundamentally different than it was when I was younger. It's like I'm positioned differently in the world. I think, let alone losing my son and all of that sort of stuff, this sort of thing that sort of sits in the middle of my life, that's this sort of before and after feeling. I feel that this concept of amazement is something that I've learnt from the trauma itself to some degree. It's a deeper capacity and a terrible love for a terrible sort of doomed love for humanity. I say that. You know, yeah, I get quite emotional actually talking about this because I do. Sorry, I'm being extremely inarticulate here, but I get so many letters coming into the Red Hand files these days, and they're heartbreaking, and they're not heartbreaking because people have lost people, and they're those letters. The letters that break my heart are these people who just say, "Look, life is shit." You know, and people are you know, I hate people, and how can you even suggest there's any meaning to the world and that sort of stuff? It's this position of acute cynicism toward the world, and it's heartbreaking to me that we can live amidst this world that, in my view, it just cannot stop being beautiful. And be so sort of demoralised and hurt by the world that we can only see it in that way. Well, they're the questions that really break my heart, you know.
But you cut through them in a beautiful way, because cynicism is a coping mechanism for the helplessness, the existential helplessness that we live with. And in a way, everything we make, everything we do is a coping mechanism for our mortality, right? And you can approach that with amazement for the fact that we are alive at all. I mean, we are these improbable constellations of chemistry and chance that some random event back right after the Big Bang set into motion a Rube Goldberg machine of improbable events that led to you know, and that is astonishing. I mean, the odds of otherwise are staggering, and yet here we are. I mean, none of us had to exist. We didn't have to exist, and yet here we are. And cynicism is just the overwhelm of that, the inability to bear it. What's so beautiful about the Red Hand Files is that you keep inviting people back into the astonishment. Just keep inviting. Yeah. That's the only way through. There's no other way.
You know, I think you do the same. That's what I was trying. That's what I was trying to say. You know, it's a sort of, it's a weird thing to ever think from I don't know about you, but from me that I was actually performing like a public service in some way to sort of help ameliorate the sort of heartbreak of the world or something like that. It's just so ludicrous, and that I ever ended up in this sort of position. But it's for me, it's a deep privilege, and it's a beautiful place to be. And
well, the wonderful thing about human beings is that we're incredibly teachable. We are moved by the power of example, and shifting from apathy to amazement is something that is trainable. And when you see somebody model it, it does change.
I mean, for me, the Red Hand Files are really about the questions, and but you do, I think, you do understand that you only have to listen to these people, or that these people only have to feel like they're being heard. These single letters that come in, like they're just sending this letter out to this random guy, and it's sort of writing back, and there is a feeling that they're being heard, or that these letters are being read, and that's the thing about them that really impacts on.
Well, it's interesting too that this is a one-on-one interaction, and the music has a similar effect. It feels so deeply personal. You know, I listen to this record, and some of the songs I feel are speaking to my experience as I'm living it right now. Millions of people around the world are going to hear it and have the same feeling. And it's so interesting that it gives this space for being held, being witnessed in our singular experience that's actually commonplace in some way. There's this wonderful James Baldwin line from one of his essays where he says, "You think your pain and suffering are unique in the history of the world, and then you read." And then you read.
Yeah.
Or and then you hear this record, or you hear music, and you're reminded that we're in it together, that in a way we are completely singular, and in a way we are completely the same.
Yeah.
We're just living one life.
We are both,
Yeah.
To me, that is the sacred. I don't want to bring in this this word, but that is to me the sacred nature of humans, is that we are unique. We are part of. We are, I grew to that. I guess it goes to the amazement and all of that sort of stuff, really. But I felt that I was separate from the world as a young person. I courted and loved the idea that I was different from everybody else, and that I wasn't part of the world, and that I sort of lived on the periphery of things, and I was an outsider, and all of that sort of stuff, and that I was an outsider, and in my later life, I realized it's just not true, and that I'm an insider, and that I'm very much part of a larger thing, but I'm also unique. With my unique needs and wants, and so I guess that's what I'm trying to do with now that you're making me think about this. That's what the Red Hand Files really are about too, is that I'm trying to say that you are unique. That is why I'm answering one letter at a time, I guess.
Beautiful. And with that, we're going to open it to some unique questions.
Oh, people asking questions.
There's a roving mic somewhere.
When you tour New Zealand again, Nick?
When?
Are you touring New Zealand again?
I don't know, mate. I hope sooner rather than later. I love New Zealand.
Did you get my 95 DFM sticker on getting staff? Ask you?
Absolutely.
All right, we have a mic, hands up right here in the front.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I have been wondering, for many years you wore a ruby ring with the snake on it, and so much so that I sort of associated it with you. It was almost like a part of you that I always expected to see. And I'm aware.
Where did it go?
Yeah, I know the backstory is meaningful, and I wondered after.
It broke.
It did.
It broke, and okay. I always keep meaning to fix it, but then something about not wearing jewellery, apart from my wife, I don't know where she is. Our wedding ring, wherever you are, feels sort of...
Entropy spares no one.
It's good. It's nice.
Right here, on the side.
I think this will be faster.
You work it, girl.
Check. Hey, Nick, how you doing?
I'm good.
I got to tell you, I enjoyed the record very much. Enjoyed listening to it, and again, I'm sorry to hear about your son. And I have a son he's been incarcerated for the last 10 years, and just I was just wondering, how do you deal with like the trauma, and how do you move forward, knowing that like you have years ahead of you to live, and yet you have like this darkness, this shadow, and those questions of like, what could I have done differently, and I deal with like, I'm only here. This isn't a dress rehearsal. I'm here because I got one chance to live, and I really want to be happy, and you wonder like how you get stuck in that when you're talking about the trauma.
It's terribly worrying. That thing. I've had my own personal experience with that, and it's deeply worrying, and there's a terrible sense of helplessness about that. And the thing is the terrible truth about it is you don't, in my view, that you simply don't have any control over what happens to the influence you think that you have over your children is actually kind of minimal, and things just happen to them, and you don't really have much control. And I mean, I'm not really one to give advice, so I am a little bit, but you have to look after yourself. You really have to look after yourself, and that child, or if he's older, I don't know how old he is, but he has his own way and his own journey, and you need to be able to separate yourself enough to look after yourself. You know, it's you have a life as well. I don't know if that remotely is talking about anything that you, but yeah. Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
Hi, Nick. I find your music, a lot of your songs, like really cathartic to listen to. And I wonder, when you're making the music, is it a cathartic process, or are you aware that it has that effect on listeners?
On people?
On people.
I'm not sure what you mean by cathartic.
I mean, sometimes it just makes me like want to cry, and I don't even know what I'm crying about.
So you're moved by it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never really know what cathartic actually means, but to be moved by it, yeah, I do. I understand that the music has the capacity to move people. When I'm actually performing music myself, I'm not weirdly enough moved in the same way as what I see happening to the people that listen to the music. I'm absolutely concerned with trying to sing the song in tune and to get the words right and all these basic things. And the song itself does what it has to do. It's a thing because the concerts can really move people, and I can see it, I can feel it actually. I understand that, but I don't have the same connection to my own songs as other people do in a way. Occasionally I play a song and get hit by a line that sort of rears up and speaks to me in a way that it hasn't before, and it hits me and I kind of well up or something like that. But mostly I just try and perform the songs as best as I can, and in the recording studio too.
Do the words come first, or does the music?
The words, yeah. Mm. So the process really is that my manager tells me that it's time to make a record, which to be honest, is the worst thing my manager can ever say to me, because it sets off a sequence of events. The first one, which is to write the lyrics, is extremely painful and angsty, and I'm a pain in the ass to be around. My wife can tell you. She looks at me and says, "Oh, you're writing another, you're back to songwriting again." And I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" and I just turn into this awful sort of person because I'm alone with all my lacks and inadequacies and all of that sort of stuff. Eventually I get the songs together and go into the studio with my band, and from then it's just pure
So you still
pleasure.
start out with the angst facing the abyss.
It's terrible.
But it just happens to be a deadline.
Yeah, I don't write, I write the Red Hand Files, but apart from that, I don't have anything to do with songwriting until my manager tells me that I have to do that. So I'm not like thinking of songs or writing cool lines down or great titles or anything like that. It's just, I don't do anything. Then I have to write the record. Then I have to work out what the record's about, and this whole process starts up again. And it's really a blank page situation.
Okay,
But it's great fun to record. My God, you know about that, right?
Sure do.
It's just the best thing in the world to be with your friends, and but particularly a bunch of guys. It was a different thing, but we're a bunch. The Bad Seeds, apart from Warren Ellis, you can never shut up. We're just a bunch of, most of us, extraordinary, inarticulate men. We just sort of basically sit around and kind of grunt at each other and throw bits of bread at each other at dinner and stuff like that. But when we're together in the studio, when we're playing music, it's an extraordinary and deeply moving thing to see these guys, old guys actually, just become extremely vulnerable, intimate, and sort of deeply articulate with the music we make. It's quite something. You should join a band.
Church is enough. Okay, last question over there.
Hi. Do you think everything that you're talking about when it comes to AI is more about the business side of things, and that music and art and creation can move back to being a more community and localized thing? Because that's kind of what it feels like to me.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right. I'm not anti-AI, by the way. I'm just anti-song generators. You know, it's a different thing, that the idea that we can mimic the artistic process. You know, AI, if anything's going to sort of help and save the world, it's science, I guess, or technology at least. And so I'm in no way anti that. And maybe it's a glitch, and we'll be allowed to go back to you know, just creating things, and that would be lovely. Yeah. Can I just say, this might open up, are we supposed to finish now?
Like what, 2 minutes or something?
I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but Maria was in, you know, I live in London, Maria was in London recently, and she rang me up, and she was sort of in a bit of a state, can I say that? You were in a little bit of
Heartbreak.
vulnerable.
Heartbreak.
Huh?
Heartbreak.
Okay. Well, I don't want to. And she was at a loose end because you're going to go and visit your parents, and you couldn't go and visit your parents in Bulgaria, right?
Right.
So you were stuck in London, and you had the misfortune of ringing me up and asking me what to do, and it was your birthday, and this was a Sunday, and I said, come to church with me, which was Sunday morning. Now, you haven't been in a...
Not really.
Not really. It's not your thing, let's put it
I mean, man knows how to make a pitch. He was like, it's known as the Church for Atheists. It has great music.
Yeah, it's called the Church for Atheists because it's so amazing, this place. Anyway, it's just a funny thing. And so Maria came along, and we're there, and this choir sings the most beautiful. It's the most beautiful choir. And it specializes in the saddest music in the world, right? And the organ is beautiful. And to me, the liturgy is deeply moving and all that sort of stuff. And I turned around, and you were visibly...
I am weeping. Now, the English do not cry in public, okay?
Well, in this church they do. There's a lot of tears going on in this church. But you're crying, and I'm like, yes. I've got her. And at the end of the service, you sort of turned around to me and looked up at me with this tear-streaked face and said, "There's some serious manipulation going on." Anyway.
But yeah, okay, I'm glad to bring this up because I was there looking at that congregation of all these different people having a collective experience, people who have had every possible joy and sorrow and loss and longing and praying out of the same book, singing the same song. And I thought, oh, this is music. This is what music does for us, for those of us who don't go to church. I mean, I listened to this record, I have the same experience. I looked over now when you guys were listening, and it was the same thing. It was the same thing. That is the sacred. That is why we're human. That is not AI. That will never be AI.
Yeah, no, you're right. Let's end on a positive note. You've convinced me. This is the great thing about conversation. It acts as a kind of corrective to dumb ideas, and you've convinced me that AI is like
and now
awesome.
We're going to have the point made with a lovely treat.
Okay.
With Mr. Nick Cave.
All right.